can say this about season 4. It is going to be so worth the wait.
Nowhere, actually.
A wrecking machine. I'll take it.
I'm still figuring out my own style, Mark, actually.
It was great.
It took 2 minutes and I had to answer, yeah, go for it.
Are you sure you're not interested? I was like, don't ask me again. I can't refuse it twice.
In Holland, in one country.
She got me so deep and underwater, and I drank it. That's not good.
You'll try chocolate from South Africa to Australia to England. It will taste so different.
So it's been really amazing that it's been with you after 10 long years.
The first title we were messing around with, we were going to call it Lockdown. Yeah. And then after a while, we actually kind of realised, God, this is dragging on a lot longer than what we thought it was going to be.
I didn't want to give people a reminder.
Our bass player has a band. We were like, let's go on the road, man. But and then it just came to a screeching halt.
We had to work on like how I was biting the carrot. Like I had to do it very purposefully, you know? You didn't want a weak bite, but you didn't want a bite that was too strong.
Someone jumps the stage and one of our techs just body slams him to the ground and you can see me kick him.
I guess I was too distracted. I was having too much fun. Never a bad thing.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, Jordan. Hello.
Hello, Mark.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. I am Mark Sugiyama from Eclectic Arts, based here in Seattle, Washington. Thank you so much for joining me on this Thursday, the 22nd of April, 2021. It's not really early because it's 9 a.m. over here, but I feel like it's early because I'm not a morning person. But again, thank you so much for taking time to join me. And this is a live stream, obviously. So if you are having questions or things of that nature, you can always put them into the comments on the YouTube channel or on Twitch. And as the conversation goes along, I will try to throw those in where I can. So just be a little bit patient, please, as we go through this interview. I'm really excited to get to talk to my guest today. Real quick housekeeping, tomorrow at 12, at noon p.m. Pacific Daylight Time here on the West Coast, The Treatment are coming back for round 2 to talk about their album now that it's out and has been out for a while and doing very well. So that's going to be right here on these same platforms at noon tomorrow on Friday. And then I've got other live streams scheduled for next week. So if you want to know what's going on, follow me as Eclectic Arts Media, one word, on Instagram. That's where I post everything first. And then I slowly migrated over to other platforms. But that's where everything goes first. So, all right. Happy Earth Day to everyone. I just kind of realized that's what today is. And so hopefully get a chance to do something for the Earth that's going to benefit it and not add to its problems. And yeah, let's kind of get into things. I'm really ready to go here. My guest today has been creating their own iconic sound and style for years independently. They have gained a legion of fans through their hard work, creative talents, and sonic vision. Their third full-length album, Initiation, will be released on May 7th on Napalm Records. Please welcome to the Eclectic Arts Virtual Studio, Skye from Sumo Cyco.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me, Mark.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining me. I'm so excited to get a chance to talk to you about the band and the upcoming release and everything under the sun.
Cool. Yeah, I'm down. Happy to spread the word out there.
Yeah, I've got to tell you, full transparency, I'm fairly new to the band. I've known the name probably for at least 3 years or so. So it's like you've been on the peripheral of the radar for a while, but now you're like right in the bullseye of it. So
yeah,
I love independent artists. I love the fact that with independent artists that they're putting everything that they have, their creative talents into their product, their vision, everything that they put out there. And obviously Sumo Cyco has been doing that for years now. I'm curious about, were you purposely looking to get to a label like Napalm at some point, or was it kind of like, did they come looking for you? How did this come about?
Yeah, well, we had a couple run-ins with Napalm. they came to a live show. One of the marketing girls, Sonia, she's awesome, and she came to a show all the way back in 2017 and saw us play. And I think that's the first time that she was kind of letting the label know that, oh, I saw this cool band live. And then a couple of years later, in 2019, we ended up opening the tour for a band called Ginger, and Ginger are just killing it on Napalm. They're another Napalm Records band that is just blowing up out there, and we were able to open up for them. And then when the team came out to see their show and saw us open, and we were able to, you know, hold our own in front of a band like Ginger and win over some fans. I think they were like, you know what, this band's got something special. And you know, we've been really lucky to have their support. As someone who has been on labels in the past and has done things independently with Sumo Cyco for the past 10 years, you really you learn the difference between, you know, what kind of like you want in a partnership of someone that you want to work with. And to me, it's someone that always has a two-way street. So you're getting just as much out of it as they're getting out of it. And that's how a real great, any relationship really works. And so you want to find those partners that create that dynamic that seems fair, and that you're getting something out of it, they're getting something out of it. So for us, as an independent artist, I had to do a lot of like the behind the scenes, like paperwork and things like that. And, you know, having a team come in there and take that away so I can just focus on creative stuff, it's actually a lot of help at this point. So I love our fierce independence, but that doesn't mean we're going to compromise when we work with a label like Napalm. Our artwork, you know, our art is our art, and they've been really cool about just letting us do our thing. So it's worked out really well.
That sounds like an amazing partnership. I was kind of wondering if they're going to try to influence the band a bit, or say, hey, maybe you should kind of do this. And you just spoke to the fact that they're not doing that. They're letting you guys be you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think they knew what they were kind of getting into. We kind of gave them, you know, a little bit of a rundown of how we've been running things for the past 10 years, and, you know, everything from our videos to our artwork. You know, I'm very hands-on with all of it, and to the point where it's almost like I'm too controlling, because I just love, you know, having everything connect to each other and feel like one cohesive project. So I think they're like, you know, we'll stand out of their way for this part and just come in when it comes to the marketing and PR. You know, they're good at that side, which is, it's great to have the help, because we're meeting new people like yourself and getting exposed to new people, which is, you know, what we want to do. So
yeah, that, you know, again, that's great. I mean, you kind of hear you know, horror stories about labels, and you probably maybe even experienced some with your pop career.
Yeah.
And so it's the fact that you got the flip side of this, that it's like a really good partnership, and you just got some the extra support, extra hands, extra muscle behind it, then it's like, yeah, everybody wins.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and Napalm has so many cool bands. It's been really interesting getting exposed to their audience, that's for sure. You know, some love, some hate, but it's good to be a polarizing artist, I think.
That's true. As long as people are talking about you, and they're definitely talking about you. So it's when they're not talking about you is when you're kind of like,
True. Yeah.
And hi, Ken, down in Houston. Thank you for joining us. Ken, he's a big fan, and he and I go back to, gosh, maybe elementary school together.
Oh my gosh, that's cool.
Yeah, he used to live here in Seattle, and then he moved down to Texas with his family and that type of thing. But yeah, he's a big music nut like I am. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Here we are all these years later doing things like this. And so with Initiation, obviously we've had this pandemic quarantine year going on and some change. Was the album being worked on, you know, in 2019, and then you're going to get things ready in 2020, or was it like you were was that kind of the timeline? What was the timeline?
Yeah, so the first inklings of Initiation started back in 2018, and we actually started a crowdfunding campaign in hopes to release it independently before we knew that we were going to sign with Napalm. So we started funding in April 2018, and my goal was to get the record out within a year. And then we just kept getting loaded with tours in 2019. It was tour after tour offer, and we just didn't have the time that we wanted to to put into the record. So I was like, you know what, we're taking like the first few months off of 2020 after we get done this tour. And then little did we know we were forced to do that, obviously, with the pandemic. And it gave us a lot more than just a couple months to finish the record. So when that first happened, we were taken aback like everyone. We were just like, almost like that state of shock for just a few months, like just trying to come to terms with our new realities in the new world, and not really kind of thinking as much about, how am I going to run my business? There seemed to be like bigger issues to kind of figure out, how are we going to survive? What does this future look like for us? And then once we kind of got a little used to the pandemic, if that is, if you can be used to it, a little more like realizing that this was going to last a while, we started going back to the record and thinking, okay, well, we have the time now. Why don't we just dig in to see if there's any more material we want to write? And we ended up writing another 6 or 7 songs that made the record. So it ended up being like transforming the record even more, that we had this extra time on our hands. And then once we kind of regrouped with Napalm and realized, we're not going to wait until this thing's over. We're going to still release some music. We've, held on to some of these songs for, years now. It's been 4 years since our last record. We're like, we need to get something out. So we kind of made the decision that no matter what happens, we're going to put it out in May, and we're just going to go for it. So that's kind of been the plan. And and we've been running with it ever since.
I would think that one of the pluses of being independent and you guys doing everything yourselves, including having the studio there in the church house that you've been, is that when the pandemic hit, you had your toys to still play with. Some artists don't have that luxury, so they're really stuck.
True. It's so true. Yeah, we're very lucky in our situation that we have built our little world around us, kind of in our own little place. I talked to some people about how, our house really isn't a typical, if you come visit, you're not just walking into a normal house, you're walking into like a jam space, you're walking into a merch warehouse, you're walking into a music video set half the time. That's how we've always been, because Matt and I, who live here, are both in the band. So everything kind of revolves around making our music and our careers happen. So there is no separation of life and art here. It's just one big thing, but it does feel a little bit like in this situation that we were, kind of almost prepared in a weird way for us to be able to do everything we needed to do just in-house here.
Yeah, that is I'm sure you had no inkling to plan, like, in case there's a pandemic, we'll be able to
yeah, true.
Yeah, and like you were saying earlier, things have definitely been in waves. The first 3 months, we'll be back to normal in June of last year, and then it became fall, and then it became, now we're in April, almost May of 2021, and thankfully things are starting to go the right direction. They're slowly starting to open up. I'm seeing press releases for tours in the fall and that type of thing. So hopefully, fingers crossed, we can get to that point. That's got to be for every musician that I've talked to, and any, not just musician, any arts related guests that I've talked to, film folks and opera and ballet, as soon as the live event was taken away, it was like, their soul was ripped out of them, basically. And was that kind of the same thing for you guys, in terms of you were doing all these tours and you're getting ready for the record, and then it's just like, stop.
Yeah. Well, if you think about it, like you build this momentum with a band, where you are, you're starting out, you gain some opportunities, some people see you live, those people become fans, and it just kind of snowballs, and people start telling each other about the band, you get some press, and, when you feel that ball start to roll as a band, you're like, don't let it stop. Like, we just want to keep rolling, keep doing what we're doing, keep getting these opportunities. And then, something like the pandemic literally put everybody to just like a screeching halt in their careers, their lives, everything, and it's super sad in so many situations, what this has done, and, seeing venues close, seeing, just average people lose their jobs, musicians can't survive in a band anymore because they don't have income coming in. There's so many things. So if I could say anything to anyone out there, is to make sure you check on your local venues, and if they have some kind of crowdfunding thing, donate a few bucks, or check on your local bands that you love, that are still emerging, and buy a t-shirt or two, that really helps. But yeah, for us, it did feel like just like a screeching halt of all the momentum we had kind of been working so hard to build. So our challenge, instead of kind of being down in the dumps, we kind of looked at each other and said, you know what? Well, let's do what we can in this situation. We can't do what we want, but we can do something. And for us, that was trying to keep that relationship going with our fans, keep creating some type of art that people could get excited about. And so we poured ourselves into our music videos. We've done a bunch of live streams with our fans. We keep in touch with social media and use technology the best way we can to get through this together. And I think having the moments with our fans where we've been able to connect have not only helped them to give them a distraction from all this, but it's really helped us as people that feel a little lost and lonely here in our own little fort, that there's people out there that still care and are still waiting, for us to come back on tour and are still willing to buy the record. And that means a lot to us. Yeah,
you said it perfectly. I mean, it's definitely something where what you were doing to keep in touch with the fans also benefited you and vice versa. Mm-hmm. I got really fortunate that during the pandemic, it's one of the few silver linings I had was that I started doing these only because of a band.
Right.
They invited me to go on their virtual tour and open it back last May. And I was kind of like, what are you talking about? What am I going to do? I'm a musician, but I'm not a band. And they're like, no, Mark, we want you to do interviews for 30 minutes. And then you'll be like the opening artist, basically. And then we'll have our DJs and our other bands, and then we'll headline. And I'm kind of like, I couldn't get my head wrapped around it for a little while because I had not done this virtual stuff. Mm-hmm. Kind of a dinosaur. But I'm so grateful to them because we did 24 shows in 25 days. And then the fans, it's really unique for them because they got to, like, let's say if they're living here in Seattle, they could see every 24 shows every night. So like traveling with the band, basically.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, and I know there's other artists that did something similar, and some did, specific live stream events, and we kind of saw how that model changed from being free to ticketed to hybrid things. So I'm always, even though obviously I don't wish that we were in this situation, but the fact that we are and seeing how creatives have got creative around it has been really interesting to me. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is interesting. I think a lot of people have had some extra time on their hands, and it's interesting to see, what can come out of that extra, with that extra time to be creative. So I agree with you. I've learned a few things in quarantine that I never thought I would learn. I learned how to do clay molds and then turn those into candle molds. And then I was pouring candles and I'm selling them on my store. And I'm like, I never thought I'd be doing this, but here I am,
Well, see, there's a silver lining. There's something.
Yeah.
Anytime you learn something new, I think that's always a good day.
Yeah.
and Skye, because of like you just mentioned, you started doing something new creatively during this time. And obviously for the last 10 years, you've been doing lots of creative things. Is that something that you left to do where it's trial and error? As a young person, were you like doing art classes? Where did all this kind of come from?
Yeah, I think I've always been a creative person. If my teacher told me like, hey, you have a book report due, but you can present it in any way you like, I would try to think of like, what is the one way that no one in the class will be presenting their book report? I'm going to do an interpretive dance, and I remember specifically doing an interpretive dance for my project on the fur trade in Canada, and I dressed up like a beaver and pretended I was surrounded by fur traders and did this like crazy dance on the floor. And my teacher loved it so much he like took me into the principal's office and was like, watch her do this dance. And I just had this little beaver outfit, like pretending I'm running away from the poachers trying to get me for my skin. And I remember that vividly of being like one of those moments that I thought like, okay, this is actually working. I thought in the back of my mind, I thought, am I going to be able to pull this off? Because, my teacher could look at me and say like, you're ridiculous. I wanted like a written book report or like a written report, and you're dancing around, like acting all scared and trying to like mime this out. And they ended up loving it. So those types of moments encouraged me as a performer to be like, wow, okay, so people enjoy this. Let me keep going. So I was known in my family. I have a lot of cousins, and I'm the oldest of all my cousins. So I would direct them in a massive play. Anytime we got together for Christmas or any holidays, I would always try to direct all my younger cousins to be in a complete production. And I would spend 2 hours, however long the get together was, preparing them all for this performance, and then would bring the parents down and show off my show that I had developed. So I always had that side of me ever since I was really young. So it seems natural, just a natural progression of what I'm doing now, you know?
Yeah, no, that's really awesome that you're doing those and you're thinking that way as a young person. And the other awesome piece is that the teacher loved it, because they could have gone the other way. I used to work as a teacher a long time ago, back when I had hair. And we all know, if you get the right teacher, man, they can just send you and make you feel so good and empower you. But if you get the wrong teacher, they can squash your dreams and your creativity, and you think that you're doing something wrong, you're a weirdo.
Yeah.
And so I love the fact that the teacher loved your I'm sure people that are watching this now or later are thinking, like, is there video of this somewhere?
I wish. I mean, I think my dad has a lot of home movies of me that might show the light of day one day, but yeah.
That'll be like on the career retrospective,
Yeah.
Case. Oh, man. And so that also kind of begs the question for me, were you always musically inclined to, or did you take lessons when you were younger as well, or did that kind of come naturally?
Yeah, well, the first moment I remember kind of it clicking in my head that I wanted to sing and be a performer was as young as grade 2, we had a performance for the school where we had to play the story by the author Robert Munsch called The Paper Bag Princess. I'm not sure if that's just a Canadian thing. I think it might be a Canadian popular story, but my character and a few of the other girls were dressed in these big paper bags, and the story is about a dragon and a prince and all these things. And I remember we all had to say our lines and kind of sing little parts, and we had this really cool music teacher who is a school teacher, and she also really loved music. So she always integrated music into a lot of our projects. Shout out to Mrs. Stang. And so I remember performing this, and everyone that came to see it was just really excited about my performance, as if I'd kind of stole the show or whatever from all these little kids, because I was I'm here performing, gonna sing loud. And ever since then, I kind of was yeah, this is what I want to do. So I went into singing classes. I went into Mrs. Stang actually also had an after school program where she did musical theater at the local dance school. So I got into that. And I just, really from there, just wanted to learn as much as I could. So theater, acting, dance, took piano lessons, guitar lessons. I just kind of threw myself into as much as I could. And so I really just dove in there pretty early.
That's so awesome, because that completely resonates with me in terms of, it sounds like you weren't thinking in terms of limits, and including now, you're not thinking in terms of limits. It's there's something I want to do, something I want to create from my head. How do we make this happen?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I totally relate to that.
And I do have to give credit to teachers like Mrs. Stang. I also had another singing teacher that my mom signed me up for singing lessons with, and she took me under her wing too, and really made me believe in myself that I was an artist from a very young age. She sat me down and talked about, because she had been a musician and in her life, and she said, you know what, if you work right now on honing your songwriting craft and really think about being an artist, not just a singer, think about what you want to bring to the world as far as what you want to say, what you want to do. And it really got me thinking about that really young, and with their encouragement and their belief that I could do this professionally, it really made me believe myself that I was capable of it. So it's amazing what, just a few people saying that they believe in you can really do when you're that young. So it's always good to tell people when you think that they've done a good job or when you admire them that you do, because you never know whose life you'll change if you just give them that little push in the right direction,
Yeah, very well said. And I think that's true, even as an adult. If there's a band you like, put something on their social media. Don't just kind of scroll past things, because it's so easy to do. Oh yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
And here's what they're doing. It's well, let them know.
Yeah.
Especially during this time when we can't see people live and connect that way. So here's a nice way to do it. And I'm seeing Ken saying, I consider Sumo Cyco a breath of fresh air in the metal scene. The music and videos are so much fun. So much metal is dark and evil, which I like it. Don't get me wrong. And I don't see as much of the fun as what you guys are putting out. That's very true.
Yeah, I agree. We try to have fun with what we do for sure.
Yeah, and for me, Eclectic Arts is trying to live up to the name. It's very eclectic, so it covers all kinds of different art disciplines. And to me, it's like, if something doesn't resonate with you, just move on to the next thing. That there's too much negativity out there, too many gatekeepers at times. It's kind of like, why don't you find something you like then?
Yeah. It's true. Yeah, I feel like what I love to bring to any space, and I was taught this from very young, is that when you walk into a room, you have a choice to, be that person that, livens things up, makes people have fun, or you can like bring the mood down. It's up to you how you want to live your life. And for me, I've always tried to put a little dose of fun and a little more positivity in the world anywhere I can. And I think I bring that through even to a genre like Ken said, that can be dark or heavy at times. And just because I love heavy music, doesn't mean I can't still be myself and have that like bright kind of burst of color, that I love in a lot of things we do. So, it is a little against the grain to some people to love super heavy sounds and also want to be so bright and cheerful. But, that's where I think our intersection is to make us different as a band,
Yeah. And it always comes back to, are you being your authentic self? And you guys are. So it's like, hey, we're not trying to be something we're not. This is what comes out of us. And if you like it, great. And if you don't, move on to something else.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So when I first started doing Eclectic Arts, I was doing all the music photography, reviews, live events, that type of thing. And so when I started picking on the musical theater, taking on opera, ballet, some of my music media folks here locally are kind of like, Mark, we haven't seen you at shows. And where have you been? What have you been doing? And I would tell them, they kind of look at me kind of funny, like, why are you doing that stuff? I'm like, well, because I'm either one, I'm interested in it, or two, I want to learn more about it. So why not do it? And so now I'm just spread out all over the place.
That's really cool.
And yeah, thank you. And that's why I totally relate to what you're talking about and what the band's attitude is towards things, that you're trying to be positive, you're trying to do what you want to authentically do, and you want to do it your way as well. So, and now I think about it, ironically, I started in 2011 too.
Oh, cool.
With Eclectic Arts.
That's awesome.
I have a random mind sometimes, so all kinds of things come out. But I also know, so when you were doing all of the, like you mentioned, getting your cousins together for Christmas shows and singing and just really wanting to perform and having some really positive people and influences early on in your life. What was it like when you were doing your solo pop work before Sumo Cyco came along?
Yeah, so it was quite a whirlwind. I talked about some of those teachers I had. So that was probably around, between 9 and 12 years old. I had those kind of experiences in my local school, local music. And then in 2012, I met that one singing teacher who got me into the studio for the first time and recording my own music. So I would write songs with her and her husband, who were songwriters, and they'd encourage me on, how to learn what is songwriting. How do you write a song? What makes the song, work versus this? What are the patterns you see? And they really taught me some cool stuff really early that I'm super grateful for about songwriting. And that's what gave me the passion to be like, I need to do this. So I got kind of thrust into the industry pretty young. I signed my record contracts when I was like 14, 15 years old. The second tour I ever did was with Britney Spears. So that was a pretty crazy experience. You go from small town Ontario to, opening up for one of the biggest artists in the world. And I got, I had to kind of just learn fast. It's like you're just thrust out there. You just got to do it. And meanwhile, I'm growing up, so I'm not even 100% knowing who I am. Teen years, like everyone, you're just trying other things, trying to figure things out. So it was a crazy whirlwind experience. So much good. I didn't walk away with $1 million, but my mom says you have $1 million worth of experiences, because there were some pretty crazy things we went through. You know, I was able to travel so much. You know, I went from Europe to Hong Kong, went to Japan 7 times, went to Thailand, went to, you know, all across EU, and touring. Britney's tour went everywhere. And then I went over to, you know, the States. I did radio tours extensively, where I visited every single city in like to all of radio stations. If anyone's been on a radio tour, you literally stop in every single town where there's a radio station, and it's like day after day of radio stations. So I saw America like inside and out, and had just like a really cool insight into like how the major labels work a band, and how hard they really have to work a new artist to get them, you know, to where they want to be. And it made me learn a lot, but I also saw a lot of things I didn't really like about the industry, and, you know, and Hollywood, and pressures, and, you know, and so walking away from that and having all that under my belt by the time I was 18, you know, it really kind of gave me this, you know, outlook, like, I think I could do this myself. And that kind of is what took me into trying to do Sumo Cyco, is that I felt like I had learned enough in those days that I felt like if I wanted to tackle anything, I could probably figure it out from the ground up. So that's what I did with Sumo Cyco.
Okay, and correct me if I'm wrong, but with, I think it was maybe your second solo release that kind of got lost in the shuffle with the label and changes and things of that nature. So I think eventually you ended up putting it out yourself. Is that correct?
No, so it was actually, you're right about the fact that, so the second record I wrote with Capitol Records and their support of the entire label and the team. And then right before the record was finished, so we were literally in the mastering stages. So this was like so close to being ready to be released. The label had a major restructuring. So this was right when MP3s and you know, Napster was taking over, and the labels were scrambling. They were realizing they were losing income because of the internet, and they merged a bunch of the companies. So a bunch of people from Virgin came into Capitol, and all of my support team, like the president, the A&R guy, everyone who's working on my project was all let go. So all these new people came in, and they're all looking at the books going like, okay, how much has this girl sold? Are we keeping this artist, letting this artist go? And I felt a bit helpless, because at the same time, unfortunately, I had lost my manager suddenly. It suddenly passed away with pneumonia. And I was in this lawsuit with this other manager that I had, and it was just a crazy time. I was, you know, that rebellious stage from my parents, and I didn't want to deal with them as much as I probably should have to help me with this transition with the label, that I ended up just getting shelved. And the only way I had to release the record, because if people don't know out there, when you record with a label, they own your recordings. You can't just put them out yourself. You have to either purchase them or take it through the contract. It's not as simple. So a lot of the time, if an artist's record doesn't get released, it's lost in this vault forever where they've owned all those recordings. And I thought that would just be, to me, just like a tragic situation to have years of work that just never got to see the light of day. So I figured out a way through the contract that the partners in Canada and Japan could take the music and license it, since they were under the same company's umbrella. And because I was from Canada and one of my biggest markets was Japan, they both agreed that they would want to release it. So it only got released in those two countries officially. But at least it gave me the opportunity to at least have it out there somewhere, so it's not stuck somewhere in a vault. But that whole situation was a little bit, you know, humbling, disheartening. You know, you were told by the labels like, oh, this is going to be such a huge record. I had people like Max Martin on it, Tim Armstrong from Rancid, this whole production team called The Matrix, who have written, you know, Avril Lavigne's biggest record. That I had, like, you know, had worked with so many cool people, and it was just, it sucked to feel like it wasn't going to get the release that I thought it deserved, and the push that it deserved. And so either way, I was still tried to keep going, and I went back to Canada, and I actually decided to hire a whole new band, and we took a minivan across Canada, and I drove the minivan. I was that motivated. I was like, you know, I've been in huge tour buses. I've been flown first class around the world, but I don't care. I'm going in this minivan. I am touring in Northern Ontario, which is quite harsh conditions. If anyone's toured in Northern Canada before, trying to go city to city to try to promote this record. And it was kind of like the first time I had done what I think a lot of bands, you know, assume is like the first step, which is just like jump in a van and just go and play shows. And I kind of did it a little bit backwards, but I still really enjoyed it and still had that fire and love for just music, that it didn't really matter that it wasn't, you know, first class kind of accommodations. I was just, you know, a young teen that just wanted to get out there and experience the world. So yeah, long story, but you know, that's a little bit of what the experience was like.
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing that. And
yeah,
I'm just randomly off the top of my head, when you were talking about how the record labels were merging and restructuring and everything like that, just as a what if that had not happened, if everything was still on the same trajectory, they mastered your record, everything went the way it was supposed to, do you think Sumo Cyco would exist?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure it would. I mean, there's a part of me that, you know, looks at that moment and has in the past has looked at it as a big, you know, kind of fail or regret or wished that you know, had happened the way I'd imagined it had happened. But then I also look at things in a way of like, you know what, you just never know what that would have brought with it. And, you know, you look at an artist like Britney Spears, for instance, who I went on tour with, who's, you know, right now in the middle of massive lawsuits, like this whole Free Britney movement, and seeing how the fame and some of the success that you think about being such an awesome thing for her ended up really hurting her, I think, in some ways that is life-changing, and a lot of people don't understand. And you don't know what, you know, whether success, failures, how people can process that, how it will be handled, what will happen. So, you know, it's not always being, you know, getting to those next levels isn't always the best thing for your life. And in some ways, having that humbling experience, going back to square one, building things up from the ground up, it's really taught me so many lessons about life. It's really kept me super grounded. You know, I've often thought if I got lost in the Hollywood world, if I would be like one of these, like you hear about the child star who grows up and can't get roles anymore because they're not as cute as they used to be. And then they end up just like getting lost in not knowing how to live up to their past selves. And I kind of thought I've luckily avoided anything like that. I've always kind of had a bit of a side of me that kind of realized, like, you know what, not everything is going to work out. And I learned that pretty early, that, you know, as much as I had this awesome, amazing opportunity, it was beautiful. The experiences were awesome, but I can't look at it as a fail. I just got to keep going and doing my thing, you know, look at it lessons of life. And, you know, it's just not my time. That wasn't my time. You know, I've had many other moments in the sun where those have been my times to shine. And, so yeah, just being humble like that, I think is a good thing to try to do when those things happen.
Well, I was going to say, I think it's been really refreshing, even in the last, 39 minutes of talking with you about how grounded you are, how thankful you are. And I've seen it from your interaction with the fans online and everything else. So
thank you.
Yeah, this is Livestream 172 since last May. So I think I have an idea of people that are grounded and appreciative and those that maybe aren't so much. And you're definitely in the category of being appreciative of everything that you have and everything that you've worked for too. It wasn't handed to you by any stretch. And I love the fact when you're talking about that, when you were back in Ontario, that you're like, I'm going to get this music out there somewhere. I'm getting in the van. I don't give a shit. And I'm going to get this out to somebody, because that really tells you that that fire was in your belly, no matter what. It was all about your art, and you're going to get it out regardless of what level, whatever, however you want to look at it. And I'm sure that just tells me in the back of my head that continues to drive you today with Sumo Cyco and everything that the band does. Yeah,
it's true. I definitely feel like there is no other path for me other than art. And I've always put all those eggs in that basket to just be like, you know what, I want to do this. I want to spend every day creating. And however I can figure out how to survive while doing that, I will, just because I have enough of that drive to know that that's, I'd rather spend my time doing the art that I love than necessarily making, tons of money or doing this because this is what people expect me to do. I realized pretty quickly when I did have those little opportunities that were presented to me where, hey, if you just compromise a little bit here on your integrity, like you might get this opportunity. And then it never ends up working out for you in the end because always something happens and goes wrong or you end up regretting what you've done. So to me, it's very important to always realize that you have to stay true to yourself and people will see through it if you're not. And even if you do gain some type of success or monetary like rewards for not being true to yourself, you're just not going to feel good about yourself because you're going to realize, you're going to feel that like, well, I kind of, didn't do what I really wanted to do. I kind of did what someone else told me to do. And that doesn't feel good. So, just try to keep that compass pointed, true north to what you believe. And if you just follow that in life, I think it puts you in a lot better situation, no matter, come hell or high water, what obstacles are in your way. If you know that that's where you're going, it really helps to give you purpose and make you feel, excited about your journey in this life,
Yeah, those are very wise words. I think that at one point someone was telling me that as long as you stay your course, and then the audience will eventually come to you.
Yes, true. Yeah, I think it's about putting yourself out there too, and just not being afraid of those opinions that maybe some people might not like what you do, or there might not be, eating up what you're dishing out, but you're going to find the right people. Those people are going to come out of the woodwork and be attracted to your energy because you are doing what's authentic to you. You're showing a true self. And, I've talked to it makes me think of a few people, fans and fans of Sumo Cyco that have reached out to me and said that they want to pursue some type of path in music or in art and kind of be an artist. And I think one thing that holds them back is saying, well, I work at this kind of like, fast food restaurant during the day. My life's really not exciting. Like, why would somebody want to like follow me and what I have to offer? And I said, your story is unique. What you are going through, you forget that it's actually really unique told from your perspective. And if you documented your days, getting out of your restaurant job and going into the studio and coming up with these things and talk to the camera about how you're feeling every day of your struggles, your daily life, and you do it in a way that's authentic, like I would watch that. Like I would want to know what someone had to go through to build their career up. And as long as they're being totally truthful and honest with the experience and not trying to like impress anyone by like faking how they're feeling or faking what their life's like, I want to know the true story of people. I don't, I want to dig in there and get to know you. And that's, I think, really endearing to people. So, yeah, it's true. It can take you a long way if you're just okay with being vulnerable and open to people.
Yeah, again, well said. I mean, you've said a lot of really great things during this time.
Thanks, Mark. I don't know where it's coming from, honestly. I have no idea.
I think there's a book in your future or something, what you've been saying. But no, I agree because for myself, it's been something similar. I just had a guest literally yesterday talk about, well, Mark, we were watching some of your interviews. And I don't know if we're going to be as exciting as some of the guests you've had. I'm like, you're on here for a reason. I liked your music. I want to talk to you and I want to know your story because like you just said, everyone's got a unique story to themselves.
Yeah.
And as long as you're, like you also said, as long as you're being honest and not disingenuous with it, then there's going to be people like yourself and like myself that, hey, I'm interested to kind of see, how did you get from here to here? And where are you trying to go with it? And let's kind of follow that journey because it's always interesting and exciting to me. And I always want people to do well. That's something I always wish for everybody. And we all going to have our, there's ebbs and flows and ups and downs and all that kind of thing. Everybody deals with that. But if you're being completely honest with what you're doing, and that is hard, you keyed in on a word of being vulnerable. You do have to put yourself out there. But once you do, then you kind of see where things go, and they can go in some miraculous ways that you did not count on at all. But you got to take that step.
Yes. Yeah, you do. And It's a lot of life's lessons, and now that I'm getting into my 30s, God forbid, but you start really looking back on your life and kind of seeing things from the perspective that you're like, oh man, like somebody did give me that piece of advice way back when I was young, and I just didn't click at that point because I hadn't been through enough experience to really take their advice as seriously as I probably should have. But as you get older, you start realizing like, oh man, people do know what they're talking about sometimes when they give you those like little, words of advice throughout your life, and you just kind of brush it off as a teen being like, oh no, it's fine. I know what I'm doing. But, it kind of rings true the older I get, those things, your parents told you, or lessons, so it's funny how it works when you get older.
It is funny how it works, and I'm a lot older than you, so you're doing fine. But yeah, I think back to things of what my mom or my dad were trying to tell me early on, and especially as a teenager, because I was a big metalhead, and I just thought I knew everything and all that kind of thing. And I realized, like, man, I was an idiot at times. They were trying to help me, or trying to help me maybe make better decisions in life. And eventually I was like, you have to fall on your face at some point, and I did.
Yeah.
But if only I'd listened a little bit more, then maybe I wouldn't have fallen as hard. Maybe.
Yeah. Well, some things ring true. Little sayings. One saying that my dad would always tell me is that you don't have to run that fast to be ahead of the pack. And by that, he just meant, if you just keep going, if you just don't stop, like, the tortoise and the hare, where you're the hare and you just rest by the tree thinking that you're ahead of everyone. If you just keep going, if you just take those steps, those small little moments every day closer to your dream or what you want to do in your life, you'll be surprised when you look back and you realize how far you've come. And it doesn't take much every day, just little actions every day that can get you further in your journey. And I've always had that in the back of my head. And I think that's encouraged me to put things out into the world that may not be quote unquote perfect, or, realizing that it might create some criticism, or that people might not think it lives up to the professionalism of somebody else. But to me, it was one step further than what I've done before. And it was me showing myself in a certain way of like, hey, I can do this. And now I can do this. And now I can do this. And it doesn't matter what my journey is compared to anyone else's journey. And instead of comparing, if you just look at yourself as like, oh, can I take it a little further than I've ever done before? That's where you really win. And unfortunately, I think with social media, comparisons and our lives of feeling like we don't live up has been something that's held a lot of people back from, I think, even putting themselves out there, thinking that they have to, be as good as that, beautiful model on Instagram, or they have to live up to the band that they see doing amazing things. And they're like, well, I'm so far away from that. Why should I put my little piece into the world? And it's not about them. It's about you just being, taking things in your life, your steps, your journey. So that's what I try to remember myself too all the time as well. So to other people, it may look like I've gone so far, but in some ways I also feel like that's all just been tiny little moments, one after another,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I've told people during these live streams that I'm always in competition with myself. That's the way I look at things. I don't care what this person over here is doing or that one over there. There was definitely a time where I was kind of looking to kind of see but whether the Jones is up to over here. But then after a while, it's kind of like, I'm just going to follow my path, and whatever that path is. And I feel good about these little small steps that I'm taking, or maybe they're large steps at times.
Yeah.
There's little reminders on my wall over here of things that say, oh yeah, that's right, that happened. And it's always good reminders of like, keep staying the course, keep going where you're going to go. And you're right. Isn't it ironic that social media is called social, and then it's actually in some ways actually separated people at times and made them feel like, yeah, I don't compare to this, so why bother? It's like, and don't get me wrong, there's been some really positive things from social media, but it depends on how it's being utilized.
Yeah, true. I followed this podcast about the I don't know if anyone's seen the Netflix documentary about the social dilemma, but it's really interesting because I myself use social media like crazy. I'm huge on social media, but I think it's really interesting to educate yourself about understanding how these companies operate, how it works, what makes algorithms work, so that when you are kind of getting frustrated with how things kind of are, either you're scrolling through and you're getting distracted, you know that that's on purpose, that that's meant to kind of keep you there. You know that they're trying to play you and play these weird rules to try to, you know, manipulate how long you stay on social media or how many people you interact with. All these things are, you know, very intentional. And I think when you realize the rules of the game, it kind of helps you see through it a little bit more, to realize, like, you know what, I'm obviously getting shown more of these like photos of really attractive girls because we know that the algorithms say that that stuff works. It doesn't mean that there's everyone in other than me is like looking like this. This is just a very algorithmic, you know, choice here. Like, this isn't real life. And realizing all these little tricks to kind of see through the veil that social media kind of puts on us a little bit. As long as you're aware of that, I think it's a lot more healthy than just kind of looking at social media as a real reflection of real life, because it really isn't, you know?
Yeah, I know somewhere I read they're talking about that social media platforms, they kind of equate it to casinos in the sense that they don't ever want you to leave the platform.
Yeah.
So like in the casino case, there's no windows, there's no clocks. They have to give you a busy floor so that you're constantly looking at the machines and everything else at this eye level. And social media platforms are exactly the same way. So they don't want a YouTube link on Facebook.
No.
You know, because that's going to take you away from them.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like you said, if you learn the rules of the game, then and it becomes much more transparent. It's like, oh, okay, then it doesn't bother you as much.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's something that like I've had to deal with too, because, you know, we're trying to, as a band, you know, we're trying to find those people that love our music. And in order to get to those people, you kind of have to trudge through some unfriendly waters, I guess, in a way. And, you know, with our recent videos that we've put out through Napalm, there's been a lot of mixed comments, and, you know, we've had to have thick skin, and luckily I've been in this business long enough that I've built that thick skin up over years. But I can see how for someone that maybe doesn't have that same confidence or same experience that I have, if they started getting some of the negativity and the comments that I'm receiving right now, I can imagine how much that can hurt people and how much it can, you know, dissuade them from putting themselves out there in some ways, you know, because of it is kind of a war zone in some comment sections where you're like, wow, these people are very passionate in hating me. And I don't know why or what I've done to them that makes them feel like they want to do this. But that's just, you know, that's the internet for you. So when you kind of realize and have empathy too of the fact that, you know, some people just don't understand the consequences of these things. And, you know, and it's just really important to kind of try to keep your head on straight and not let yourself completely fall into that world. Because like I said, it's not the real world. People don't actually usually act that way to my face when I've been out touring and living the real world. It's only kind of like specific to comment sections. But yeah, it's good to try to keep, you know, remind yourself over and over again, like this is just because that person said that one thing, they're probably having a shitty day and they probably are hating their own lives, and that's why they got to lash out. And I shouldn't take that as a reflection of me and what I'm doing, you know? So I think it's important to remember that. And I try to remind myself all the time.
Yeah, no, that's really good advice, because even on an extremely small, obviously I'm not Sumo Cyco or you or anything like that, but I forgot that, like, I have my settings on YouTube where inappropriate comments will go to a folder. So it could be spam, it could be something that's kind of hateful or whatever. So I never look at it. I just never look at that folder. It was probably 3 weeks ago that for whatever reason I was on the platform looking at my page, and I was like, oh, what's this? And I clicked on it, and there's a bunch of spam stuff in there just to get rid of after like 60 days. But then there were some things that got in there that were comments about some of my interviews. I'm like, oh shit, what is this? And yeah, for me, I'm almost 51 now. So it's like my skin's so thick that it's like, it's just more interesting to see that someone take the time to put something like that up there. It's like, again, like we were saying earlier, you know, why don't you find something you like? Or why don't you put a thumbs up on something that, you know, worked for you instead of spending so much time on something negative? Because like, is that really how you go about your life in general? And like you said, 99% of those folks are not going to say that to your face. They're not going to kind of thing. They just feel, oh, I can do this because I can, because I'm on this platform. So there we go. And that's what I think of you. And I'm going to move on to the next one. It's like, geez, that's like kind of a sad existence.
It's true. I mean, I try to think like, you know, at least in my mind, I imagine them of being like really like, you know, lonely and they don't have a great life and they just feel like they need to get their anger out somehow. So they go, oh, I'm just mad at this girl online and just take it out. At least I try to picture that and try to put them in a sympathetic light. And sometimes, even though in some ways they don't really deserve that, but at least that's how I like to think about it so that I don't, you know, end up hating that, you know, random person on the internet. I just think, oh, poor you. You are so bored with your life. You have to do this all day. Like that doesn't seem like a happy existence to me, but you know, to each their own, I guess.
Yeah. And like you said too earlier that you're always looking at the positive side of things, and there's so many positive comments and so many fans. And I'm part of the Facebook fan group, so I see those things that get posted in there every day.
Cool.
Including from yourself. So there's a lot of love there, and that far outweighs the non-love. So
yes, 100%.
Yep. Here's my tribe. Here's my people. We're trying to add more people to it. That's how the best way to look at it. So
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and you know, one thing that just kind of ran because I want to make sure that I don't take up too much of your time. And I don't forget to ask you this. The tour of your church home there with all the studio and the videography level and everything else that you do there, the merch warehouse. Did you ever change the stock photos in that one frame that was in the Napalm Next Door? You showed a picture frame that had the... Oh yeah. Did you ever change those?
I actually, this past, from my boyfriend's birthday, I actually put 2 real photos in there. There's a third one that is still the fake family though, because I didn't print out a third photo. So there is a photo of the fake family from the frame. So yeah, if people want to come in, I still have, you know, a little surprise if they're like, who's that? And I'm like, yeah, my long lost cousin Julie. I don't know. Yeah.
I just thought that was one of the funniest things when I was watching. So for people who haven't seen it, if you go to Napalm's site, there's Napalm Next Door where they visit either studios or people's homes. And Skye's case there, she was giving the tour of the home. Yeah, there's a picture frame, and if you watch it, you'll see what I'm talking about. But it was really funny. So yeah, it's interesting that you now have some actual people in that frame.
Still working on it, Mark. Almost there.
Wow. And so the other thing that's like you were talking about with you've been making your own videos, the concepts, you direct them, produce them. Is that something that you're self-taught at, or where did that skill come from? Because that's not something you just automatically do.
Yeah, so I've always really been into documenting my life, and I've always had like a video camera, and that's one thing I think my parents did encourage me is for my birthday when I was young, they gave me one of those hand recorder cameras when they were first, you know, coming out, and I was so into it as a kid, and I would make you know, my own home movies, and I just have so many of them of me trying to push my friends into making these little skits and everything else. I just loved it. So when I was actually starting my pop career, one of the things I did to get the labels interested was I made this kind of small documentary of my life and just filmed myself and said, here's my bedroom. This is like what I do. Here's my guitar. And I, you know, it's all this kind of little kid kind of stuff, but just kind of giving them an insight into what I did. And I also made a music video that was using stop motion animation with these little toys where I made them dressed up like me and my band and had them like playing the songs and had this crowd like mob them, and it was all done in stop motion animation. And I think that the label was really impressed that they were like, oh, this is cool. Like she's got more to offer than just, you know, a good singing voice. Like there's other creative things you can kind of see bubbling under the surface. And so when it came to Sumo Cyco, I had already been working on YouTube for a few years. For instance, when we talked about that second record that didn't get released anywhere, they had the label in Canada had a budget for 2 music videos, but there was a couple other songs that I was like, man, I need to do a music video for these songs. So I just thought to myself, I'll just do it myself. I'll just grab my little hand cam and just film myself. And I made this music video that's online called Music Is My Boyfriend, and another one for a song called Baby Doll Gone Wrong, where I used my little cousin Hannah, and in that video she's like a little 2-year-old, 3-year-old, but now she's like this big TikTok star. Now she's like, 17, 18 years old. And yeah, and so that just kind of started getting me into it. And then my friend, I was working with her. She was an artist herself, and we were writing together, songwriting. And she was like, Skye, would you ever be interested in doing like directing a music video for me? Because I was always really into like, Ash, we should do this for your video, or, this song would be so cool if we did this. I just had all these ideas. And she kind of said, like, do you think you'd like want to help me like direct a music video? And I was like, okay, sure. So we did this video for her called Explode. And we went into the subway with a bunch of people and just had like a lot of fun, and went through Toronto and just filmed all day. And the video turned out really cool, that it actually was getting a little bit of like attention from some of the industry people in Ontario. And I had a meeting with one of the biggest Toronto music video production companies that was kind of asking, like, would you be, maybe considered interning or kind of getting in? Maybe we could hire you to do a few things and you could learn from our directors. And Sherry over there, really cool producer, really kind of took me, thankfully, for a meeting and encouraged me. And I asked her, I said, should I be, thinking about film school, to learn some of this stuff? And she says, what do you want to be, a cinematographer, or do you want to be a director? Because if you want to be a director, she's like, it's experience. You need just a lot of experience. So it actually kind of pushed me away from film school into the point where I said, well, you know what? I'm just going to do film stuff myself. So I did all of Sumo Cyco's music videos, and I just started learning slowly but surely. And then I got hired on to do a few director projects. Like I did a pilot for a kids TV show, and I was going to do this one show that was all about like, kind of like a VJ style, where I was kind of directing in a way, but still in front of the camera, like presenting. So I kind of started working with some other people and just kind of learning things here and there. And then it's just, it is a lot of trial and error, though, with Sumo Cyco videos, that's for sure. And nowadays I'm getting more and more into the visual effects, like trying some CGI projects and getting into more of that kind of thing. So it's been a lot of fun, actually, kind of learning as I go and letting the world see my progression, by releasing everything down the line as I've been learning it.
That is amazing to me. I thought you were going to tell me, oh yeah, I studied for a year or two or something, just took some time off and started going to film school or videography or something like that. And because the results look so good.
Well, thank you, Mark.
Yeah, absolutely. And I review advanced films. I've done that for the last year, so I do have a chance to talk to people about how they've done their independent projects, and some will take them 6 years to get things done. And they don't maybe have the skill set or the wherewithal, but clearly you do. And I love the fact that you've been putting out the behind the scenes of the videos, so you can kind of see, this wasn't just something we did in an hour.
Yeah, very true. And I got to give credit to Matt, my co-writer, co-producer, co-founder of Sumo Cyco. He's influenced me in ways because he's just such a film buff. He just loves independent film. He loves horror movie, sci-fi, that kind of genre. He knows it inside and out. And when we watch movies together, we're always like, oh, did you see that shot? How did they pull that off? Or is that practical or VFX? Like, we're always thinking about those things. And we always have those things in our minds that he'll bring like this cool idea that I'm like, oh man, I didn't even think of filming it like that. And so he's a really good collaborator in that sense as well. And I think he brings a lot to the table with his just vast knowledge of films. And he will tell me sometimes, he's like, oh, there's this shot in this one movie. I saw them. They used like this piece of wood and they went over top of trees with two people running on either side of the piece of wood. And the camera was bounced in the middle so that they could go over top of trees. And it looks like the camera's just pushing the tree over with its own force. And it's like, oh, that's such a cool shot. It's like from Evil Dead, and Matt's like, how do we use that in a Sumo Cyco video? So he knows a lot of those kind of weird, fun, kind of practical tricks that I'm always keeping an eye out whenever I see like a behind the scenes. I'm always into watching it.
Yeah, that's I like watching the behind the scenes things, but I don't put it into practice.
Right.
And with the latest batch of videos that you've done for Initiation so far, what's been like one of the toughest scenes to actually pull off for the music video?
Oh man. Well, the last video that we just put out, Vertigo, was one of our I think the most effort that we put into set building. Usually we'll do one, maybe like a miniature and a set, but for Vertigo, we set up like a bunch of really cool escapes. And one of the things that we did was we've collected a ton of junk over the past few years that we just always keep as props. And Matt did a great job. I said, I have this vision. I just want this massive wall or this huge beast of just technology and bullhorns and lights and computer screens just all mashed onto one big kind of backdrop. And Matt kind of took it and ran with it. And I was pretty busy actually editing our previous music video that I was like, I need you to build this. I need you to help me with this. And he's like, I got this. So he came up with this genius idea to have it all on wheels so we could move it around the studio in different angles, and just built it, you know, constructing with wood and just sticking stuff on and making it feel 3D with lots of different objects sticking out and moving parts and lights. And it just turned out really, really cool. And it was quite a challenge to kind of even, you know, you have this kind of fuzzy vision in your mind of like what this thing could be, and you kind of imagine it, but you don't really know exactly how it's going to turn out until you just go for it and just start building and start just being like, oh, that would look good there, or that would look good there. And it became such a piece of art that now we're debating, because we feel so bad to tear it down and take it out of the studio, that we're debating just taking it and putting it in our backyard as like this one massive piece of art. So we were taking surveys around the neighborhood to be like, if we had this in our backyard, would you complain to the city about it? Like, are you the type of person? Because Matt really wants to keep it, but it would be kind of like this big monstrosity of just like old junk. It could look like, you know, to some people, but our neighbors are super cool. And they're like, yeah, put in your backyard, light it all up. We'll have a bonfire and like, it'll look so cool. So they weren't going to complain about it. So that's cool.
Well, one, that's awesome. You have neighbors like that.
Yeah.
And that also could be like, maybe they don't know exactly what they just said yes to, that you could keep putting more things and more things, and your whole backyard turns into, you know, cycle land.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Yeah. But it was a lot of fun. We did like, you know, everything from freezing my butt off in the cold, trying to film a bathtub scene, to like, I literally wrapped ropes around my feet and my hands and just like was like a marionette in some respects. And one of the scenes that was really fun to pull off, but simple ideas. And yeah, it was a really fun video to do. And Bystander was another video that recently came out, and it was really fun because Matt was the one that came up with the idea to have me jump out the window at the end. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is going to be awesome that we could tie this right into the record cover and kind of emulate the look of the record cover at the end of the video. And just that idea of him coming up with that and me realizing like, oh, we could do like a bicycle seat on a mic stand, and thinking that was a way to make it look like my feet weren't touching the ground. And we're like, perfect, genius, let's do it. Let's try it out, and end up working great. But it was really just ideas flying off the seat of our pants while we were working, kind of thinking, how could we make this look like this? And we just kind of brainstorm and figure out those DIY hacks to make it happen.
I love the fact that as you're telling me these stories about the videos, that I can totally picture, and other creatives out there too, you're probably thinking the same things. Like, I love that, because that's me. That's how I think. It's like, hey, I got this idea. So how do we make it, you know, a reality? And, oh, well, that won't work, but what if we did this? And especially like you're talking about yourself and Matt, that you're bouncing ideas off of each other, and it's all kind of like two magnets basically. And you're but these things that when the end result looks as good as it does, it says, hey, you're onto something here for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good. It's good to have a creative partner that can really push you in ways that's like, it's not like you're not butting heads per se, but you're just always encouraging each other to take it one step further, you know? And we have that relationship enough where we're honest with each other enough when we don't like something that the other person's bringing to the table. So we have a good way of kind of working through our ideas to get to that perfect sweet spot where we both really agree and love something. And that's how we know that it's gonna work well, is because we both feel like, okay, this is good. You know, when one of us is kind of like, oh, I'm not sure about that, you know, we know that we haven't quite nailed that perfect sweet spot yet.
I used to work as a model photographer, so I know exactly what you're talking about. When you're collaborating and the model's like, yes, and I'm like, yes, then we know. Yeah. It's feeling good to you. It's feeling good to me. We know we're on to something here, versus I'm not quite feeling that idea. We need to kind of, tinker with it a little bit more. Then, okay, we're not on the exact same page. We're close to it, but we're not quite there yet. So one thing I was talking with another guest about, and he's probably my age, was that with the back in my day, back when I had to walk 10 miles in the snow to buy a record, that the song selection on records is very specific about what you started with. Maybe the second song's a single, and then the one that you end your record with was really important, because if it kind of encapsulates what the album's about, then the listener wants to go back and listen to it all over again. Is Initiation kind of set up that way with the song titles?
Yeah, so this record I think was curated more than any other Sumo Cyco record for the fact that we really did think about the album as a whole, and we kind of would listen to the songs we had written, and then we would both kind of go back and forth with, okay, I think that we need a little breath somewhere that's a little lighter feeling. Let's write a song that has a little bit more space in it, or let's write a song, I don't feel like there's enough chaos in this part of the album. Like, I think we need another song that has a little bit more of a faster tempo. And Matt and I really thought about that because we had so many opportunities, like I talked about earlier, where the record was ready to go and then, okay, not quite yet. And we would sit and we would kind of go over it again and go, is this the best possible combination of songs we can think of? Because we wrote so many for this record compared to most records. So it was always like, well, let's take this one out and put this one in and see how that feels as a complete piece. And so, yeah, for sure. I feel Dance is Doomed is the official end of the record. Awakened comes on most physical copies as a bonus track. But this Dance is Doomed, I think, really does encapsulate what you said about taking the feeling of this past few years. The idea of Dance is Doomed started off as kind of a negative thought. I was going through dark spots at the beginning of COVID, and even before that, where I kind of felt like, that those creeping kind of devil on your shoulder comes in and starts telling you like everything's doomed anyway. We're all just going to die anyway. The planet's dying. The political system is in shambles. People are in poverty. The world sucks. This is just all doom and gloom. Like everything's just going to end in a big explosion when the sun blows up and everything just isn't like, what's the point of anything? Like, that horrible nothingness, the cloud coming over telling me, everything sucks. But then I started seeing that there's a dance. The reason why we called it this Dance is Doomed is because the dance is what's so beautiful about it is before everything ends or before, the world caves in on us, we're dancing together and we're celebrating and we're trying to live in that moment. And I think that's, to me, where it really kind of all came together. As I said, that yes, in every song I talk about, as deep as the issues that I'm feeling, all the way to like the most darkest spots. But I always come back to finding that hope and positivity in it all. And when you're in a room with a bunch of people where you're just dancing to the same beat and you're loving that music and you're living in that moment, that is what life is about, no matter what comes next or has come before. It's like living in the present for those few moments where you really can just enjoy being with people, being in the moment, feeling something that you love like music, and getting into that flow of the beauty of what life really is. And so, yeah, this Dance is Doomed. Yes, it may be doomed, but we're dancing it all the way until the end. That's what I say.
Well, I love your attitude toward that, and I also just noticed that must be my lucky day because the advance for media of your record just hit my inbox. So
awesome!
I can listen to the entire thing later today, including that song, so I can listen to exactly what you're talking
about. Yeah.
Nice. And the other thing I know with what I was looking through with Initiation, and maybe you've done with previous releases too, is that you've got a lot of bundles, and it looked like you did them very specifically because some of the things are really maybe typical things you would see in a bundle, and some things, there's a question mark, like a mystery surprise that you'll get with your bundle. Clearly, you're probably very intentional with that type of thing. Is that just part of the discussion with Matt of like, hey, what can we do for this release, and what do we want to give the fans?
Yeah, so back in 2018, I was brainstorming one of our I call her our fifth member of the band because she's worked with Sumo Cyco with doing all of our photography, a lot of our graphic art, and her name's Francesca Ludicar, and she actually grew up with me as a neighbor, and she designed my first MySpace page. So that's just telling everyone how far we go back. But yeah, and I was brainstorming with her and I said, you know what, I really want to do something where there's like a collectible set. You know, I remember my mom always being obsessed whenever we were kids and our Happy Meals. If there's like a collectible set, she'd want to get all of the pieces of the set. And I was like, we have so many diverse fans that to me have different aesthetics that, you know, some fans find us because they love pop music and it's like that little bit of an edge that they love. Some fans find us because they're metalheads. Some people are punk rockers, and it's all in between. And I said, how do I represent all these different people and maybe like have some type of set that like different people who like, you know, the feminine version, and then there's one that's a little darker. And I came up with this concept to make 4 clubs or gangs from Cyco City, and each one had their own theme and their own look and their own colors, and they all interact with each other as characters in our storylines. And I did this quiz on our website at sumocyco.com, and where you can take a quiz and it'll tell you which of the 4 factions that you belong to, and then you can buy a bundle based on that group. So it was kind of like a fun way to play with it. And then the question marks are the posters. So up until certain videos are released, we haven't really released what each gang is or who is in it. And you kind of have to follow along all the little clues and Easter eggs that I'm dropping as I go through. And then, you know, when the poster's revealed, you'll kind of see like, oh, okay, cool. Like here's this gang. And then we have on the back as a picture of each of the band kind of in that world. So the one is like called Malice and Company. They're like corporate, like business owners, very posh. And then so for that photo, the band dressed up all in suits and we're at a fancy dinner party. And then the next one is kind of like more rebellious and we're at a sports game. And so it's kind of like a fun adventure. We call it Cyco City, and the further you kind of dive in the rabbit hole, you can get in pretty deep, or you can just kind of like enjoy it from the outside of like, oh, cool, there's lots of cool colors and imagery. But for me, it's there are a lot of like hidden meanings in between everything we do.
That is amazing that you have such creative intention behind what you're doing, that you've created these different clubs, gangs, you have different things you're slowly revealing, you've got Easter eggs in there. I mean, it's just like, it just kind of blows my mind that you have so many things, and it's the highest compliment I could pay you that you're doing so many creative things on your own. But then it's one thing to have the idea; it's another thing to make it happen, and you're making it happen. And it just tells me that, I mean, like I can probably see that. Do you have like a comic book series coming up down the road, and maybe even like a feature film or something? Because you have the skill set and the ideas are there.
Oh, I would love to. It really is about you know, just planning my time properly. You know, with an album release, it does take up a lot of my time to do all these kind of little details. You know, for instance, the other night I was spending like 3 or 4 all-nighters in a row because I had promised the fans that each of the 4 USBs that you collect have 4 different and 3 on each USB. So basically 12 videos I had to do for all these USBs. And I was like trying to catch up with all the editing, and really no one can do it but me, because I'm the one that's kind of has these weird kind of like themes and storylines going on in my head that no one really knows about. Not even the band truly understands everything that's going on in my brain. So I was like, I got to edit these, and I was running behind the deadline to get them all done so that they could be shipped, you know, properly and packaged and all that stuff. And so, you know, if I had, you know, more hours in a day, you can bet that there would be a comic book, a full movie, you know, 3D characters, you know, all that stuff, you know, collector's cards, all that stuff I would love to get to. It's, you know, it's just about finding the time. But yeah, I've got big dreams, lots of ideas up in that noggin of mine. It's just about getting them done.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, yeah, you only have so many hours in the day to make it happen. But I could also see maybe it's, you know, 20 years down the road where you actually have like a production company that you're doing things for other artists. So yeah, you are doing their videos, or you are giving them some creative ideas of how to do a campaign for their new album, or like you decide that Sumo Cyco is going to take a year off or something, and here's something else that you decide to do, because it just sounds like you're just bursting with ideas all the time.
It's true. Yeah, Matt and I often talk about we'd love to do more educational type of, videos, whether that's a course or a series of videos on YouTube, just, sharing some of our lessons and knowledge with up and coming bands, because, we have been able to, thankfully, thanks to our fans, survive as full-time artists for the past few years, even with the entire coronavirus and everything that's happened, and it's taken away our touring. But because we pay so much attention to things like our fan base and our merchandise launches and whatnot, that we kind of consider ourselves like entrepreneurs as much as we do artists, because we've been able to figure out how to work our business enough to keep us afloat, while at the same time being able to devote, all of our time to the things that we love, like our music and our videos and whatnot. So it is kind of a tough thing. I think there's a lot of bands out there that would probably love to spend a lot more time working on their projects and their bands, but because of the finances and everything, they find it really hard to have to quit another job. So we have a lot of advice for people that are, really wanting to make that switch between doing music as kind of like their fun side project to their full-time project, because there are a lot of risks you have to take, but there's a lot of things that can potentially help you, just knowing these little tricks that can really help you navigate that world for sure.
Yeah, I can see Cyco Consulting.
There you go. Mark's coined it.
There it is. And you can even do that. Yeah, film some online courses, charge $20 if you want or something, or $50 an hour, or whatever. I totally see that being able to happen, because you have all these ideas and you've gone through your own trials and tribulations, kind of figure out, hey, here's what we did and here's what we can pass on to you, so that you can maybe do it in half the time, because we've already done the legwork for you.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and there's still so much to learn. I mean, even me, I know that I've only scratched the surface on some of the things that I love to do in the future. So there's lots more in me to go. So yeah, it's fun. We're always learning. And as much as I want to share that to the next people, there's always more stuff that I gotta, I want to learn all about CGI so I can make all of our music videos, really elaborate using, the wonders of technology. So there's still a lot of things that I'm looking forward to doing too.
Cool. And just to wrap this up, again, we know that the album's coming out on May 7th. What else can we look forward to? What other things are in the horizon?
Yeah, so Matt actually just walked in because we just got our vinyls delivered, which is super exciting. So for the first time ever, Sumo Cyco is releasing a vinyl, and we are going to be doing another single called Bad News. We have the video in the works. It's coming out on the 5th of May. And then we're working on potentially, fingers crossed, some touring for the end of the year, if all goes well. But in the meantime, we're just going to keep putting out things with our fans, interacting. We're going to do a bunch more music videos. You're going to keep learning about Cyco City and our storyline as we go through. There's more videos, more content coming out. And of course, if people are interested, we've got so many cool pre-order bundles like Mark was talking about, USBs with exclusive content. We've got, our album book, which has 28 pages of artwork and photographs. And then we also have, all the albums and t-shirts and merchandise that you guys can expect. But yeah, we're having a lot of fun with it over here.
Awesome. Well, Skye, thank you so much for taking so much time. I really, really appreciate that we got a chance to go beyond the 25-minute promo kind of interview. And
thanks, Mark.
Yeah, I love learning about the band. I wish you every success in the world with it and the release on the 7th. And yeah, I'm so glad to be a part of the Cyco fandom now.
Awesome. Thanks, Mark. Well, appreciate the support. Thank you so much for paying attention to our band. And yeah, hope to see you again. Maybe one day in Seattle, we'll be able to finally be together in person at a show, maybe. That'd be great.
That would be amazing. And I hope that happens sooner than later.
Me too.
All right. Have a good afternoon over there. Thank you so much.
Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.